Rise up, winter's past and gone. Tune your strings, tie on your bells, it's time to rant along. Unite and share the flowing bowl, let the music ring. Rise up, raise your voice and sing.
Mel Barrett is a well-known singer around the Chester and North Wales area. He's clearly been influenced by people's need to homeschool their children during lockdown. When asked to record some videos for this weekend, he has taken subject matter to heart with surprising results. Here's his light-hearted, multidiscipline look at adult education.
Just a little atom of chlorine, valence -1. Bobbing around in the sea, digging the scene, just having fun. Not concerned about the size or shape of her outside shell. It's fun to ionize one little atom of chlorine with an unfilled shell. Well, somewhere in this sea lurks handsome sodium, with enough electrons on his outside shell, plus an extra one. Somewhere in this sea I'll find a negative for my extra energy. Somewhere in this foam a positive will find a home. And Chlorine felt a magnetic pull. She looked down, her outside shell was full. Sodium said, what a gas, be my bride. I'll change your name from chlorine to chloride. Now the sea evaporates to make the clouds for the rain and snow, leaving behind a chemical compound in the absence of H2O. But the crystals that wash up on the shore, they're happy ones. So if you never thought before, think of all the love that you eat when you salt your meat. Yes, just think of all the love that you eat when you salt your meat. There was a king sitting in his garden all alone, when his brother in his ear poured a little bit of henbane, stole his brother's crown and his money and his widow. But the dead king walked and got his son and said, now listen, kiddo, I've been killed and it's your duty to take revenge on Claudius, so kill him quick and clean and tell the nation what a fraud he is. The kid said, right, I'll do it, but I'll have to play it crafty, so no one will suspect me. I'll let on that I'm a dafty. So to all except Horatio, he counts him as a friend. Hamlet, that's the kid, lets on his round the bend, and because he's not yet willing for obligatory killing, he tries to make his uncle think he's twopence off the shilling. He takes a rise out of Polonius, treats poor Ophelia vile, tells Rosencrantz and Guildenstern that Denmark's bloody vile. Then a band of travelling actors like 784 arrive to do a special one-night gig at Elsinore. Hamlet, Hamlet, acting balmy. Hamlet, Hamlet, loves his marmy. Hamlet, Hamlet, hesitating. He wonders if the ghosts are fake, and that's why he's waiting. So Hamlet writes a scene for the players to enact, so Horatio and he can watch to see if Claudius cracks. The play was called The Mousetrap, not the one that's running now, and sure enough the king walked out before the scene was through. So Hamlet has the proof his uncle gave his dad the dose, the only trouble now being that Claudius knows he knows. So while Hamlet tells his mummy her new husband's not a fit one, Uncle Claude takes out a contract with the English king as hitman. Now when Hamlet killed Polonius, concealed corpus delicti was the king's excuse to send him for an English hempen necktie with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to make quite sure he got there, but Hamlet jumped the ship and put the finger straight on that pair. When Laertes heard his dad's killed in the bedroom of the Arras, he came rushing back to Elsinore to sweet Hotfoot from Paris, and Ophelia, with her dad killed by the man she was to marry, after saying it with flowers, she committed harry-carry. Hamlet, Hamlet, no messin', Hamlet, Hamlet, learned his lesson, Hamlet, Hamlet, Yorick's crust, convinced him all men, good or bad, at last must turn to dust. Now Laertes lost his cool and was demanding retribution, so the king said, stick with me and I'll supply you with solutions. He arranged a sword fight for the interested parties, with a blunted sword for Hamlet and a sharp one for Laertes. And to make double sure the old belt and braces line, he arranged a poisoned sword tip and a poisoned glass of wine. The poisoned sword got Hamlet, but Laertes went and fluffed it, 'cause he got stabbed himself, and he confessed before he snuffed it. Then Hamlet's mummy drank the wine, and as her lips turned blue, Hamlet said, I think this king is a baddie through and through. Incestuous, murderous, damned Dane, he said to be precise, and made up for hesitating once by killing Claudius twice. He stabbed him with the sword and poured the wine between his lips, and he said the rest is silence, and they cashed in all his chips. They fired a volley over him, it shook the topmost rafters, and fought in brass, knee-deep in Danes, lived happy ever after. Hamlet, Hamlet, end of story, Hamlet, Hamlet, very gory, Hamlet, Hamlet, I'm on my way. And if you think that was confusing, you should read the bloody play. Edward VII, who some call the Peacemaker, died in 1910. Buried in Windsor and in the procession, the highest and finest of men. There were 9 crown kings and 30 proud princes, leaders of many a land. And old Kaiser Bill rode next to King George with his field marshal's baton in hand. And Crippen was captured that very same year as Halley's comet flashed by. The first of the labour exchanges was opened the year the old king died. The Sydney Street siege of 1911 saw anarchy die in the flames. In London in June, King George and his queen played coronation games. A place in the sun, said the Kaiser in Hamburg, inspecting his new battleships, while the king made India, Ireland and Wales the places for right royal trips. Titanic was launched on the day of the Derby, the last London horse bus was shelved, and the suffragettes marched demanding their rights, and in came 1912. Jack Judge went down to West Bromwich town to welcome the brand new year. He went to the pub, had a little sup, 'cause he liked his pint of beer. And when he'd had a few, he began to sing, and his voice he raised up high. My name's Jack Judge, I'll write you a song from Oldbury town, come I. Now a Birmingham man who was sitting nearby, he heard what Jack did say. £1 to a penny, he said to Jack, you can't write a song in a day. Well, Jack just laughed and he took another drink, and he said, I'll take you one. I'll write a song this afternoon that I'll sing before day is done. Jack laughed again and sang another song, and he called for a pint of beer. And then he took the train to Staley Bridge, where that night he was due to appear. And on the very first day of 1912, old Jack Judge won his bet. And the song he wrote and sang that day we never shall forget. The song he wrote and sang that day we never shall forget. March 1912, brave Scott and his comrades died as a snowstorm roared. And later that year, good General Booth finally laid down his sword. There were riots in Ireland concerning Home Rule, Mrs. Pankhurst imprisoned again. And Wilbur Wright died, the first of the flyers, and the Royal Flying Corps was made. Titanic went down in the spring of that year, taking 1,500 lives. And the Balkan states blazed from border to border. Death was sharpening his knives. Of the 1910 monarchs who'd mourned for King Edward, by 1913 few survived. Though some of them lived to a graceful old age, assassins took many of their lives. Death came calmly to Denmark and Sweden, but elsewhere the murderer's hand took the Pasha of Turkey, the king of the Greeks, and Spain was pursuing death's plan. And the armies of Europe paraded and postured, the stockpiles of weapons increased. At The Hague, as if in grim desperation, they opened a palace of peace. 1914 saw more suffragettes' marches, the Archduke of Austria slain. In less than 2 months all of Europe was marching, and death was in business again. Many a lad from many a family willingly gave of his all, and they died in their millions for dubious victory, answering Kitchener's call. And they marched off to war in the trains and the troop ships, they sang as they hurried along, and their words echo back from the graveyards of Flanders, singing old Jack Judge's song. It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go, it's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye Piccadilly, farewell Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart lies there. I'm the original honky-tonk train. I'm the one that you see when you're watching the westerns. That's me chugging by. With the ones you've seen in the films, I'm the best, and I'll tell you why, 'cause no other local can ever compare with the places I've been. Been everywhere and I'll never once stop for a moment to rest in. And if my fire's burning properly, the hot air order rise and go along a lot of tubes, which are surrounded in water, in the boiler till eventually it moves on down the engine's aorta, out of the funnel where a cloud of smoke exudes. And now the hot air in the tubes has made the water in the boiler turn to steam. Hot, hot, hot. And now the steam also rises, collects inside that large symbolic dome at the top, top, top. But if you think that now the steam is just as hot as it's gonna get, you're wrong, because it's not, because this is where the driver opens up the regulator valve handle. The steam becomes alive again, it goes back through the boiler or can, which I call it only 'cause I've a shortage of rhymes ending in "an." So haven't been through the superheater tubes, the steam is hotter than ever it was before. The heat is more, maybe sure the steam now passes on into the piston cylinder. It pushes the piston forwards and backwards by means of valves, and this reciprocating alternation obeys a simple mechanical law. The piston then pushes connecting rods fixed to the wheels. They're sat on the rails, but that's not the end of the story, 'cause then all that steam, as you will have seen, is blown out as exhaust through the funnel, whence it can expire, thereby increasing the draft of the fire. So now, apart from some rather superfluous details which doubtless seem to you obvious, hardly worth saying, the story's over in its basic essentials. The rest is merely overlaying, as you can see for yourself quite easily, although I would just like to mention the thing at the front always comes in handy when you want to catch cows. Johnny was playing in the garden one day, playing at cards and dice. Into the garden came little Gertrude, carrying 3 white mice. "I've got some of them," Johnny said. Gert said, "No, you've not. And I'll bet you anything you like, I've got everything that you've got." So Johnny lifted up his little pullover and laid his navel bare. And as he stood up standing, he said, "Bet you not got one of them there." "Oh, yes, I have." She lifted up her blouse. "Yes, I have," said Gert. "And the only difference between mine and yours, mine isn't covered in dirt." So Johnny took off his little pair of trousers, showed her what lay beneath. And when Gertrude saw that she hadn't got one, she was overcome with grief. She dropped her mouse, she ran into the house, shouting for her mum. She said, "Johnny's got something under his pants, and Mummy, I haven't got one." Well, a few minutes later she came out of the house. She didn't make a sound, and Johnny was jumping and shouting for joy, waving his thing around. She said, "All right, John, I know you've won, but I don't really mind, 'cause me Mummy says as long as I've got one of these, I can get one of them anytime." If I had all the money in the world, there ain't much that I'd change. It sure would be nice going out once or twice, but living like a lord would be strange. I've got everything that I'm needing, got everything to get through. If I had all the money in the world, I'd have all the worries too. If I had all the money in the world, some things I still couldn't buy. A smile on your face I could never replace, no matter how hard I try. Some things are far beyond value, some things just don't have a price. I don't need all the money in the world, but a little bit would be nice. If I had all the money in the world, I'd have all the worry in the world. We may just be going through a funny old phase. There seems a lot of worrying about these days. If I had all the money in the world, I'd live my life the same. Money can't buy the days passing by. Ain't that a crying shame? So it ain't worth the paper it's printed on. Money don't maketh man. I can live without money in my world. I'll bet you a fiver I can. Sandbags, windbags, camels with an ump, fat girls, thin girls, some a little plump, slave girls sold here 50 a lump in the old bazaar in Cairo. Brandy, shandy, beer without a froth, braces, laces, a candle for the moth. Bet you'd look a smasher in an old loincloth in the old bazaar in Cairo. You can buy most anything, thin walls, fat cows, a little bit of string. You can purchase anything you wish, a cloth, a dish, something for your Auntie Nellie, harem, scarum, what do you think of that? Penny, striptease, dancing on the mat. Oompa, oompa, that's enough of that in the old bazaar in Cairo. rice pud, very good, what's it all about? They made it in a kettle and they couldn't get it out. Everybody took a turn to suck it through the spout in the old bazaar in Cairo. You can buy, come and try, everything in style, genuine Bedouin carpet for a pie. Funny little smelly things floating down the Nile in the old bazaar in Cairo. You can buy most anything, sheep-sized sand pies, a watch without a spring. You can buy a pomegranate too, or an ounce of hash, a little bit of wacky-backy ash, max, pack-a-max, what's a strange affair? Dark girls, fair girls, some with ginger hair. I could tell you how I know, but I think we'd best stop there. In the old bazaar in Cairo, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. For 20 frantic, fruitless years I worked in Dublin town, reporting for newspapers, busy writing down the words of politicians in me endless quest for truth. In such a wasted exercise I squandered all me youth, and that's the start of all me troubles, as now I'll tell to you, for I find myself now talking like politicians do. So if anyone should ask, do I take sugar in me tea, I grasp them warmly by the hand, and this is what I say. I'm very glad you asked me that, for at this point in time, in the circumstances that prevail, there is in the pipeline infrastructural implications interfaced with lines of thought which lead to grassroots viabilities, which at this point I'd rather not enunciate in ambiguities, but rather seek to find negotiated compromises, which are the bottom line for full and frank discussions, which can serve to integrate with basic fundamental principles to which we all relate, and not in doctrinaire philosophy, as any fool can see in inescapable hypotheses confronting you and me. So in the interests of the common good, no, you may never fear, for I have the matter well in hand. I'm glad I made things clear. Now I'm sure you can imagine this has greatly changed my life. An example was the fateful day on which I wed my wife. All went well until the moment the priest asked me with a smile, "Do you take this woman for your wife?" And quickly I replied, "I'm very glad you asked me that, for at this point in time, in the circumstances that prevail, there is in the pipeline infrastructural implications interfaced with lines of thought which lead to grassroots viabilities, which at this point I'd rather not enunciate in ambiguities, but rather seek to find negotiated compromises, which are the bottom line for full and frank discussions, which can serve to integrate with basic fundamental principles to which we all relate, and not in doctrinaire philosophy, as any fool can see in inescapable hypotheses confronting you and me, and in the interests of the common good, no, you may never fear, for I have the matter well in hand. I'm glad I made things clear." Now I'm lying on my deathbed and I'm filled with mortal dread, for I know that very shortly I will certainly be dead. And when St. Peter asks me, do I want to come on in, I'm sure to face damnation, for I know I'll say to him, "I'm very glad you asked me that, for at this point in time, in the circumstances that prevail, there is in the pipeline infrastructural implications interfaced with lines of thought which lead to grassroots viabilities, which at this point I'd rather not enunciate in ambiguities, but rather seek to find negotiated compromises, which are the bottom line for full and frank discussions, which can serve to integrate with basic fundamental principles to which we all relate, and not in doctrinaire philosophy, as any fool can see in inescapable hypotheses confronting you and me, and in the interests of the common good, no, you may never fear, for I have the matter well in hand. I'm glad I made things clear."
Big thanks to Mel for making these videos for us. We really appreciate it.